Elon Musk walked into a Texas diner wearing a MAGA hat and found himself face to face with a group of bikers. What happened next will leave you speechless. It was the kind of diner you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. Tucked along a dusty stretch of road just outside Amarillo, Texas, its neon sign flickered half-heartedly against the late afternoon sky. Inside, the smell of frying bacon mingled with the faint sweetness of maple syrup, while the low murmur of conversations filled the room. It wasn't fancy, but it was a sanctuary for weary travelers and locals alike. Elon Musk pulled his electric truck into the lot, stepping out in his usual understated way. Jeans, a Tesla t-shirt, and a MAGA hat perched casually on his head. The hat wasn't a statement for him, not really. It was a gift, passed along at a conference, and it had been sitting in his truck ever since. Today it happened to shield his face from the blazing Texas sun. He slid into a corner booth, his back to the wall, and ordered a coffee and waffles from a waitress who looked like she'd seen 1,000 faces just like his. Elon wasn't looking for attention. If anything, he was enjoying the anonymity of a quiet afternoon in a town far removed from Silicon Valley's endless noise. The bell over the door jingled, and a group of bikers walked in. 6 of them clad in leather jackets with patches that spoke of countless miles traveled. Their boots struck the tile floor with authority, their laughter loud and unfiltered. They radiated the kind of confidence that came from living life on their own terms. Most people glanced their way, then quickly returned to their plates. Elon didn't. He caught the eye of one of the bikers, a broad-shouldered man with a grizzled beard and a jacket that bore the nickname Bull. Bull's laughter stopped mid-sentence as his gaze zeroed in on the man in the corner booth. His eyes lingered on the MAGA hat. The easy grin on his face twisted into something harder, more calculating. "Looks like someone wandered a bit too far from Hollywood," Bull said, his voice cutting through the diner like a blade. His buddies chuckled, but their eyes were watchful. The waitress froze mid-step, her face tight with unease. Elon looked up from his coffee, his expression calm but curious. "Hollywood?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "Not quite." Bull's boots thudded against the floor as he approached the booth. The diner seemed to shrink with each step he took. "You sure about that?" Bull said, his voice low but charged. "Because that hat you're wearing, it's a statement." Elon set his cup down slowly, his eyes never leaving Bull's. "Sometimes a hat is just a hat," he said evenly. The room went silent. All eyes were on them now, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Bull leaned closer, his broad frame casting a shadow over the booth. The diner felt heavy with an unspoken challenge, every fork clink and quiet cough amplifying the stillness. "A hat like that doesn't walk into places like this without a reason," Bull said, his voice gravelly yet deliberate. The other bikers, still hovering near the counter, exchanged smirks, their leather creaking as they shifted. One muttered something under his breath, prompting a low rumble of laughter from the group. Elon didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned back in his seat, his fingers resting lightly on the edge of his coffee cup. His calm demeanor only seemed to stoke Bull's irritation. "It's interesting," Elon said, his tone measured. "A piece of fabric can carry so much weight. You're reading a lot into it. Why is that?" Bull blinked, momentarily thrown by the unexpected response. "Because it stands for something," he shot back. "People wear it to show which side they're on. So, which side are you on, Mr. Big Shot?" Elon glanced around the diner. The waitress had disappeared into the kitchen, leaving the other patrons frozen in place, eyes darting between the two. A man sitting at the counter pushed his plate aside, muttering, "This is why I don't stop at places like this anymore." With a soft sigh, Elon turned back to Bull. "Do you really want to have this conversation here?" he asked, motioning subtly to the diners, who were now wide-eyed and waiting for what came next. Bull squared his shoulders, his jaw tightening. "Why not? People like you don't come out here unless you're trying to stir the pot." Elon chuckled softly. "I came for waffles," he said. "They're good, by the way. You should try them." The unexpected remark caught Bull off guard, pulling a snicker from one of the bikers by the counter. Bull's glare shot in the direction of the laughter, silencing it instantly. He turned back to Elon. "You think this is funny?" "No," Elon said, his voice steady. But I think misunderstandings usually are. Bull tilted his head, his brows furrowing. What's there to misunderstand? That hat speaks loud enough. Elon paused, letting the weight of Bull's words hang in the air for a moment. Then he leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Maybe we should talk about what it says to you, he suggested. Because that seems to matter a lot right now. The room held its breath, waiting for Bull's response. For a brief moment, even his companions seemed curious about what he might say. The tension remained, but there was a flicker of something else, something like intrigue. Bull's jaw twitched as he considered Elon's words. His buddies at the counter exchanged wary glances, sensing that the dynamic was shifting. The tension in the diner hadn't eased, but it had morphed into something less predictable. A quiet pull toward the conversation that was unfolding. "You want to know what it says to me?" Bull finally asked, his voice low but carrying the weight of years of hardened opinions. He leaned one hand on the table, the leather of his jacket creaking as he shifted his weight. "It says you're either clueless or you're looking for a fight. Out here, that hat's got a history. People wear it to make a statement, one that doesn't sit right with everyone." Elon didn't respond immediately. He took a sip of his coffee, his gaze steady on Bull. When he finally spoke, his tone was calm but firm. "That's fair," he said. "But isn't it worth asking why someone like me might wear it? Or are you more interested in making assumptions?" Bull straightened up, his eyes narrowing. "All right then," he said, crossing his arms. "Why are you wearing it?" Elon set his coffee cup down, his fingers brushing the brim of the hat. "Because it was a gift," he said simply. "I don't wear it to take sides. I wear it because it reminds me of the person who gave it to me. A retired engineer who spent his life solving problems most people didn't even know existed. We had a great conversation about hard work, innovation, and what it means to leave something better than you found it." The honesty in his voice cut through the room like a blade. Even Bull's hardened expression softened, if only slightly. "That's different," Bull admitted after a long pause. "But you gotta know how it looks to folks out here." "Absolutely," Elon replied, "and I respect that. But maybe instead of judging someone based on what they're wearing, we could talk about what we stand for, what really matters." Bull didn't say anything at first. The other bikers shifted uncomfortably, clearly unused to seeing their leader challenged in this way. One of them, a wiry man with a scar running down his cheek, spoke up. "All right, genius, what is it you stand for?" Elon looked around the room, his eyes landing briefly on each face before returning to Bull. "I stand for moving forward," he said, "for finding common ground even when it feels impossible, and for believing that no matter how divided we seem, there's always a way to connect." The room fell silent again, but this time the weight was different. The tension had given way to something more profound, a collective curiosity about where this conversation might lead. Bull's lips pressed into a thin line. Then slowly, he nodded. "All right," he said, his voice gruff but less hostile. "You've got my attention, so what's your idea of moving forward?" Elon leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped together on the table. The room was quiet now, the sound of clinking forks and muttered conversations replaced by an almost electric anticipation. "Moving forward," he began, "starts with conversations like this one. People don't always see eye to eye, but most of the time, it's because they've never really tried to understand where the other person is coming from." Bull cocked his head, his arms still crossed. "Sounds like a fancy way of saying, let's all get along. The world doesn't work like that." Elon shook his head. "No, it doesn't. But it also doesn't work when people assume the worst about each other without asking questions. Take us, for example. You saw this hat and you made a judgment. I get it. Where I'm from, people make judgments too. But imagine how different things might be if we started by asking, why, instead of assuming we already know." Bull's brow furrowed, and for a moment he seemed to wrestle with the idea. One of his crew, the wiry man with the scar, spoke up again. "All right, Elon, since we're asking questions, why'd you really come here? A guy like you doesn't just wander into a hole-in-the-wall diner in the middle of Texas for waffles." Elon smirked. "Believe it or not, I'm working. scouting locations for a project. I like to see things for myself, talk to people, get a feel for the area. You'd be surprised how much you can learn just by listening." The man with the scar let out a short laugh. "Listening, huh? You're talking to the wrong crowd for that. We're more about action." "Action's good," Elon replied, his tone easy, "but it's better when it's informed. That's why I build things, to solve problems, to create something that makes life better for as many people as possible. And that includes folks like you." "Folks like us?" Bull asked, his voice sharp again. "People who know what it means to work hard, to build something with their own two hands," Elon said. "You think Tesla or SpaceX came out of nowhere? They're built on the same principles you live by: grit, determination, and refusing to give up when things get tough." The room seemed to hold its breath. The bikers, who moments ago had seemed ready for a fight, now looked more curious than confrontational. Even Bull's posture had relaxed slightly. "So what's your angle?" Bull asked. "You trying to win us over with some fancy words and big ideas?" "No angle," Elon said simply. "Just a conversation. But if you're interested, I've got something to show you. Something that might change the way you think about what's possible." Bull raised an eyebrow. "Oh yeah? What's that?" Elon stood, tossing a few bills on the table to cover his meal. "How about a tour? I've got a Tesla facility not far from here. Come see what we're building, and what it could mean for you." The bikers exchanged skeptical glances, but there was a flicker of intrigue in their expressions. Bull stared at Elon for a long moment before finally shrugging. "Why the hell not?" he said. "But if this is some kind of sales pitch, we're out." "No sales pitch," Elon said with a small smile. "Just an invitation." The group of bikers followed Elon out into the parking lot, their boots crunching against the gravel. A few of them exchanged quiet comments, still unsure what to make of the situation. Bull walked at the front, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets, his sharp eyes studying Elon as if trying to figure out his angle. Parked near the edge of the lot was Elon's Cybertruck, its angular design looking almost alien against the backdrop of rusting pickup trucks and weathered sedans. One of the bikers, a younger guy with a red bandana tied around his head, let out a low whistle. "That yours?" he asked, nodding toward the truck. "Sure is," Elon replied, pulling a key card from his pocket. With a single swipe, the door handles popped out, and the headlights blinked to life. "Hop in. It's not far." The bikers hesitated, clearly unused to taking rides in something so unconventional. "All of us?" one asked, eyeing the truck's spacious cab. Elon chuckled. "It'll be tight, but you'll fit." Bull crossed his arms, his eyes narrowing. "We're not piling into that thing until you tell us what we're getting into." Elon leaned against the truck, arms casually folded. "What you're getting into," he said, "is a chance to see something different. To understand that innovation isn't about tearing people apart. It's about finding new ways to bring them together. You might not trust me yet, but I think you'll trust what I'm about to show you." Bull studied him for a long moment. Finally, he nodded toward his crew. "All right, let's see what this guy's got." The group climbed into the truck, the leather of their jackets squeaking against the futuristic seats. As Elon drove, he started talking, not in the slick, rehearsed way of a salesman, but in a straightforward, almost conversational tone. "You know, a lot of people think Tesla's just for rich folks," he said. "Fancy cars, big price tags. But the truth is, what we're working on isn't just about cars. It's about changing the way we think about energy, about transportation, about what's possible for everyone." The bikers listened in silence, the hum of the Cybertruck's engine barely audible as they sped down the road. The landscape outside shifted from dusty plains to the sleek, modern silhouette of a Tesla facility on the horizon. When they arrived, Elon parked near the entrance and hopped out. "This," he said, motioning toward the massive building, "is where the magic happens." The bikers stepped out of the Cybertruck, their boots landing on the pristine concrete of the Tesla facility's parking lot. The building loomed ahead, a futuristic structure of glass and steel that seemed to glint with possibilities under the late afternoon sun. They exchanged uneasy glances, clearly out of their element, but Bull took the lead, his expression stoic. Elon swiped a keycard at the entrance, and the glass doors slid open with a soft whoosh. Inside, the atmosphere was entirely different from the dusty diner they'd left behind. The air was cool and clean, and the faint hum of machinery buzzed in the background as employees moved with purpose. Large screens displayed real-time updates on production metrics, while sleek robots worked alongside people on the assembly lines. "Welcome to the future," Elon said, gesturing around the space. "This is where we're building electric vehicles, energy storage systems, and the kind of technology that could change how we live, if we let it." The bikers hesitated at first, hanging back near the entrance. It was the youngest of the group, the one with the red bandana, who broke the silence. "This is wild," he muttered, his eyes wide as he watched a robotic arm seamlessly piece together a car chassis. Elon smiled. "It's something, isn't it? Come on, let me show you around." As they moved through the facility, Elon explained each section with enthusiasm, his words brimming with passion for the work being done. He showed them the battery assembly line, where sleek modules were crafted with precision. He pointed out the solar panels being tested for durability, explaining how they could provide energy to off-grid communities. At one station, a team was developing a new prototype for a more affordable electric car, designed to make sustainable transportation accessible to people everywhere. "This isn't about making toys for billionaires," Elon said, his voice rising slightly to carry over the sound of machinery. "It's about solving problems that affect everyone. Climate change doesn't care how much money you have, where you're from, or what you believe. We all have a stake in finding solutions." Bull, who had been silent for most of the tour, finally spoke. "You really believe all this can make a difference?" "I do," Elon replied without hesitation. "But it's not just about the technology. It's about people being willing to think differently, to imagine a better future, and to work together to make it happen." Bull nodded slowly, his gaze drifting over the assembly line. "It's impressive," he admitted. "I'll give you that. But how does any of this help someone like me? Someone who's spent their life fixing old machines, not building new ones?" Elon turned to face him directly. "It helps because it shows what's possible," he said. "It's easy to get stuck in the way things have always been. But when you see something like this, when you see that change is possible, it opens your mind to what you could do too." The bikers were quiet as they continued the tour, their earlier skepticism replaced by a mix of fascination and reflection. Even Bull, the grizzled leader who had confronted Elon so fiercely at the diner, seemed softened by what he had seen. As they returned to the entrance, Elon stopped and turned to face the group. "Look, I'm not saying this place will solve every problem," he said, "but it's a start. And if you're ever curious, if you ever want to see what else is out there, you're always welcome here." For a moment, no one said anything. Then Bull stepped forward, extending a hand. "You're an odd guy, Musk," he said with a hint of a smile. "But I respect what you're doing." Elon shook his hand firmly. "Thanks, Bull. I respect what you're doing too. And for what it's worth, those waffles really were great." The bikers laughed, the tension that had followed them since the diner finally breaking. They climbed back into the Cybertruck, the ride back filled with conversation about what they'd seen and what it all meant. As the Cybertruck rolled back into the diner's parking lot, the bikers climbed out, quieter now than when they had arrived. The dusty lot seemed smaller somehow, the world outside the Tesla facility less expansive. They stood in a loose circle near their bikes, each lost in thought. Even Bull, who had dominated the conversation earlier, seemed reflective. Elon stepped out last, leaning casually against the truck. "I've been to a lot of places," he said, breaking the silence. "Met a lot of people. But today was different. You reminded me why it's important to have these conversations. Not just about technology, but about where we're going as a society." Bull glanced up, his expression unreadable. "You talk a good game, Musk," he said. "But I'll admit, you showed us something today. Made me think, and that doesn't happen often." Elon chuckled. "Thinking's the first step. Action comes next." One of the younger bikers, the one with the red bandana, looked at Elon and asked, "Do you really think all this tech stuff can fix the world? Like, for real?" Elon's face grew serious. "I think technology is a tool. It's not about the machines or the gadgets, it's about how we use them. We can build walls, or we can build bridges. The choice is always ours. The group fell into a contemplative silence. Bull broke it by extending his hand to Elon once more. "You're all right, Musk," he said gruffly. "We don't agree on everything, but I respect you for putting your money where your mouth is." Elon shook his hand firmly. "And I respect you for listening. That's the hardest part." The bikers mounted their motorcycles, the roar of engines breaking the stillness of the lot. One by one they pulled away, leaving Elon standing by his truck, watching them go. Bull was the last to leave, giving Elon a brief nod before revving his engine and disappearing down the road. As Elon climbed back into his Cybertruck, he paused for a moment, staring out at the horizon. It wasn't every day that worlds collided so unexpectedly, but when they did, it reminded him why he did what he did. Progress wasn't just about building machines or sending rockets into space. It was about connecting people, even in the most unlikely circumstances. He turned the keycard, the truck hummed to life, and he drove off, leaving the diner behind but carrying the day's lessons forward.